So, is this guy the second coming of the Messiah, or has he done a deal with the devil? You decide. Let's start off with his YouTube channel. This is all really good stuff on the face of it. He's pulling the whole show to pieces, in fact. He's anti-establishment, pro-freedom, pro-democracy, against world-controlling organisations like the WHO, WEF and Big Pharma. All in all, he seems to be a jolly good egg, even if you don't necessarily agree with all his views. I am getting just one red flag though. The size of his audience. Someone with an audience that large is clearly not being censored by YouTube. In my opinion, I would maintain that people who are truly against the establishment are always censored by the likes of YouTube and Facebook, as YouTube and Facebook are the establishment. You may then say, well, why would the establishment want someone out there like Russell criticising them? And you're right, it does seem a bit odd. So I'll put this to you in another way that might make it a bit clearer. If you were taking your troops into battle and wanted to make sure you won the war, what better way than to have your own general leading the other side? But that general can't get the confidence of his own troops whilst he says nice things about his enemies, now can he? So I'm not saying that he is that general, just pointing out why even the so-called good guys might be batting for the other side. Anyway, all I'm really doing here is red flagging the fact that the establishment seem to be extremely tolerant of him by allowing him such a huge audience on their media. Whilst we're here though, that number 33 he has tattooed on his arm and is using to promote his tour. People in my world would immediately recognise this as the 33 Masonic pyramid steps. Russell contends that the 33 is simply the age of Jesus when he was murdered. Now if he'd said that the 33 was the number of his favourite racing driver or a winning horse he put a bet on, I'd have no issues with this. But Jesus' age? Who even knows that? I mean, if you were a Marilyn Monroe fan, would you tattoo a 36 on your arm? Plus, if it really was about Jesus and not about the Masonic pyramids, then I'd be expecting him to wear a cross around his neck. But guess what he's got instead? Anyway, at the end of the day, it's just a number and a geometric shape, so let's not dwell on this either. Although one aside before I move on. Do you remember any previous famous person with a similar dress sense to Russell? So let's look at this possible connection next. First of all, here is the end of a phone interview Russell did with the late Sir before everyone knew what Savile was all about. Although everything I've heard since suggests that they all seem to know what Savile was all about.
It'd be very nice to meet you one day, Mr. Jimmy Savile, just, you know...
If you've got a sister, you could meet me by bringing her along.
I mean, I haven't got any sisters, but...
I don't usually meet fellas, but if you've got a sister, that's okay.
I've got a personal assistant called Marsha, and part of her job description is that anyone I demand she greets, meets, massages, she has to do it. She's very attractive, Jimmy.
Well, that's a good start.
What kind of
start? You could send her along to do some research.
Would you like her to wear anything in particular, Sir Jimmy?
I'd actually prefer her to wear nothing.
Right. So you want Marsha, my assistant, to meet you naked? Okay. Well, that's not going to be a problem.
Nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong with that, Jimmy. It's just...
The last time I spoke like this was the Father Christmas.
Oh, yeah, I never trusted those Father Christmases in Debenhams or other stores. They're available. Oh, I said stores instead of shops. I've been in America too long. I don't trust the Father Christmases you get these days, Jimmy. I think you... Perhaps you should be, I think you're, I've always thought of you as a sort of a Father Christmas figure, you know, solving problems.
I couldn't stand the drop in wages.
Jimmy, it's been divine of you to talk to me in this restaurant. Thank you very much. I wonder, would you pass on my best wishes to your beautiful dinner companion, and perhaps you'd consider coming on the show again in the future?
Who knows? I'm always available, and my beautiful dinner companion will have to remain secret because she is of outstanding beauty.
Ooh.
And as such, if you saw her, you would lust after her.
Particularly if I saw her with you, because that just heightens the sexuality of the situation. Thinking
No, I'm not into threesomes.
But Jimmy, there was a time when you were the defining voice of the BBC, and perhaps...
I still am.
You are now, you are tonight, but you should be, as well as passing down information, you should be passing along other things, people could argue.
I've never passed anything in my life, I only take.
Jimmy Savile, thank you very much for your call. Hey, Jimmy, could we...
Honour and a pleasure, and in the words of Omar Khayyam, oh.
Woohoo! Jimmy Savile there!
Now, in his defence, a good interviewer does exactly what Russell does here and gets the interviewee on his side. That way you can get a lot more out of them. Louis Theroux, for example, is a prime exponent of this art form. He has a genuine charm that gets the other person's trust. However, Louis draws a line in the sand at decency and always makes it quite clear how far he'll go. But I don't see any lines being drawn here whatsoever. There's just a bit too much hero worshipping for my liking. Again, this is merely another red flag, so let's move on. His relationship with Katy Perry. This seems to happen a lot in Hollywood, a short, seemingly chemistry-free marriage that you suspected would go nowhere from day one, and indeed it didn't. So what's this obey thing about? Is it just a bit of a jape to wind up feminists, or a bit more Illuminati control? Well, perhaps this little clip will give you an idea. Note that Katie's in a mischievous mood, but when Russell pulls out his ace card, she does seem to change her demeanour somewhat.
Hello, bring it up. Hi, darling. How are you?
Hi, how are you? Hello.
Hi. What did you think of the whole shebang?
I thought it was...
You didn't watch it!
My favourite bit was when Chalky each fell over on the carpet, and then Pipsqueaks come over, and then Sneezy went, no! That was probably my favourite bit.
You just put him right in it now.
I did watch the
I
Oscars.
call him on his bullshit.
Don't swear.
Oh, this is morning television. This is morning
In England.
So listen, who are you happy to see win? I mean...
I'm happy that for everyone, really. Just everyone. People that won, people that were nominated, people that were just there.
Katie!
Those unsung heroes, the people that fill the seats.
Of course. Katie, how do you deal with this guy?
No, he's actually hilarious.
Well, if my wife could carry one of these cards around and use it to control me, I guess she might think about it. Seriously though, I don't think this is very nice. He's being a bully. I certainly hope she didn't get punished later on. Anyway, Katie might be giving you more clues in this short interview clip about the world she signed up into.
And then it didn't work out. Like, it was quite a little blip on the radar. I think the label went bankrupt or what have you. And because I swear I wanted to be like the Amy Grant of music.
Yeah.
But it didn't work out, and so I sold my soul to the devil.
And if you think this pop star under control isn't even a thing, here are a few other contenders who may or may not have sold their souls to the Pyramid Masters. Okay, moving on again. The Olympic closing ceremony. A lot of conspiracy theorists interpret his part in this as some kind of bizarre Masonic act to warn you what he's really all about. I.e. that he's the real-life Pied Piper who will ultimately lead his children to their deaths whilst playing his merry tunes. Personally, I dismiss this Pied Piper act as a bit of fun, but for one thing. The Pied Piper is not British, and this whole show was about fish and chips, Spice Girls and Sunday roast, and certainly not about Pilsner sausages and German murderers from Hamelin. So what on earth is it doing here at all? It doesn't make sense, it doesn't fit. Okay, I'll leave you to ponder that one. Next. An interview on Lorraine Kelly's show. This is a bit uncomfortable, but watch how he moves his right hand during the interview, then keeps it there just a bit too long.
Weird. Look how
What
slowly
beautiful,
they're
beautiful
walking.
children.
These are my friends' children from
Hiya.
near where I live, Dolly and Frankie. Come here, you two. Don't be scared or nothing.
They look shy, but it's
Don't
all
act
right.
like you've not met me. Sit down. Be normal.
Hi.
There they are.
So
Yeah.
tell me about these two.
These two children are friends of mine that live near me. I'm friends with their mum, and I love them quite a lot. Frankie, do you love me a little bit?
He does. Well done. He does.
Do you think I'm a nice person? Yeah. Do you know Lorraine? You watch Lorraine on the telly sometimes, don't you?
Oh, it's lovely to see you.
Don't be shy, darling.
Look, are you going to stand as London Mayor? Gosh, you would be some London Mayor. It would be very interesting. Hi!
Frankie, you're not going to stand as London Mayor. You don't have any policies. You don't offer solutions in your book.
Yeah!
Yes,
okay.
darling. Do you think that I should be Mayor of London, Frankie?
Yeah.
He seems pretty
Frankie
committed.
thinks so.
Frankie,
thinks
he's
so.
not actually eligible to vote, so he's not really
No.
very helpful for me. What do you want, darling? Do you want your mum?
There, she's there. It's
She's
fine.
just there, look,
It's fine.
Frankie.
But would you do something like
Frankie,
that?
shut up, for God's sake.
Sit
Sit normally.
You're fine. You're fine.
At first sight, this looks like an innocuous accident, but on viewing again, I'm not so sure. Little girl certainly wasn't comfortable with it, and seems to keep looking quizzingly at her mum before eventually shoving him off when he moves his fingers. Nothing to see here, folks. Let's move on. Next topic. What we need is a world government, right? You know, to take away all our freedoms and choices. Let's see what Grease Monkey Videos has to say about that.
While egalitarianism promotes the decentralization of power, Russell calls for a centralized administrative system, which is exactly what he claims to be against. When asked who would redistribute the wealth and levy those heavy taxes, Brand says,
I think we do need to, there needs to be a centralised administrative system.
Paxton replies, a government. There needs to be a government. Brand says,
But built on... Yes,
There needs to be a government.
Well, we might maybe call it something else. Call them like the admin bods,
Right.
so they don't get
And how would they be chosen?
call them what you want, but sewage by any other name smells the same. And government by any other name is still a holding pen for the criminally insane, power-hungry psychopaths who want to steal your wealth, pad their pockets, and please their puppet masters. That's the system we currently have. That's the system that's for aggression, for theft, for centralized power in the hands of a few, for sanctions, for military intervention, for criminalizing natural rights, and for lucrative favors to special interest groups. Brand further states,
The very concept of profit should be hugely reduced. David Cameron says profit isn't a dirty word. I say profit is a filthy word, because wherever there is profit, there is also deficit. And this system currently doesn't address these ideas.
those who say such things about profits are hypocrites, since they themselves engage in profiting from the very system they are condemning. When a man works hard, conducts his business with honesty, and profits from the labor of his hands, it's reasonable to expect that such a man should receive and keep the reward for which he labored. And no one has the right to help themselves to this man's wealth and redistribute it to others who haven't worked for it. This, in and of itself, is antithetical to true freedom.
And here is another extract from Hugo Talks on the very same topic.
If you want to live without the threat of war, it seems to me that you have to look at what the causes of war really are. The consolidation of power, the ability to embark on imperialist missions, the ability to cut loose from the will of the ordinary people that you govern. The truth is that Ukrainian people, Russian people, American people, Saudi people, Icelandic people, Senegalese people all have more in common with one another than they have in common with the people that govern them. What is required is a new system of global governance that somehow comprises the local and the global in a way that gives us the ability to stand up to serious external threats and simultaneously govern our small local communities in a meaningful way. What is required is a new system of global governance.
So this is a guy who has been making videos every day, getting millions of hits, promoted by YouTube across their platform like mental, who always talks about the World Economic Forum. What are they up to? saying they're the bad guys. They have too much control over the governments of the world. We're slipping into a dystopian future of digital surveillance and our freedom's being taken away. This is what he says day in, day out, that the problems of the world are being created by a shadow world government. And this guy is now saying that the answer is that we need a new system of global governance? I mean, the World Economic Forum has a page called Global Governance. That is a one world government. That is a new world order, for feck's sake. And here he is calling for it. This is what you need. Global governance. Isn't that what controlled opposition are supposed to do over time? Gain people's trust by saying the things they think you want to hear, amass a ton of followers with the help of massive promotion through YouTube, and then start telling them that the answer is the exact same thing that is causing the problems.
Are you now starting to understand what controlled opposition is all about? So summing up, should you be following him into battle or not? I certainly don't see any harm in following him on YouTube. Just be on the lookout for the telltale signs, i.e. like his massive U-turn on how the world should be run. In particular, be very concerned when Bill Gates produces a lovely peppermint sweetie which protects you from pandemics, and Russell comes on munching a packet and telling you how yummy they are. Then you'll know whose side he's really on. On the other hand, if you want someone reliable to follow onto the battlefield and who isn't dodgy at all, then I recommend this guy. Not Ed Miliband, I hasten to add.
And on the subject of puppets, we'll take a look at this clown here. I'm going to show you a clip of Ed Miliband. What's important is not what he says, but how many times he says it. Just watch this.
These strikes are wrong at a time when negotiations are still going on. But parents and the public have been let down by both sides because the government has acted in a reckless and provocative manner. The problem out. Because the public and parents have been let down by both sides, the government's acted in a reckless and provocative. I think that both sides should, after today's disruption, get round the negotiating table, put aside the rhetoric, and stop this kind of thing happening.
All right. 5 times. 5 times he said exactly the same thing. Now, what that tells me is that those words have been written down and pretty much learned. And I would ask the question, who has written those words? Has he written them and learned them? Someone else written them and learned them? If someone else has written them and he learned them, that means he's 100% a puppet. But let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that he wrote them down and learned them. Is that the behaviour of a leader? Not in my opinion. The only thing that we should be saying to the likes of Ed Miliband, and I would include David Cameron, Theresa May and Hague and the lot of them, the only question we should be getting involved with them is take me to your leader. That's it. Because he's not the leader and neither is David Cameron. And this is what we need to be exposing in British politics. The fact that they're all puppets and are answerable to unseen puppet masters.
Sadly, very few people know about Richard D. Hall, and there's a good reason for that. The lunatics in charge of the World Asylum don't want you to know about Richard Hall. Just one more thing though, as my favourite TV detective Columbo would say. When Judgment Day comes and we're about to take revenge on all the so-called collaborators in this plot, let's do what Richard said here. Our number one priority should not be reprisal, it should be to find out who is pulling their strings. I don't believe, for example, that Tony Blair took us to war with a peaceful, unarmed country 20 years ago because he wanted to. Nor do I necessarily think that Bill Gates wanted to murder people with his clot shots. There's something much bigger behind all of this, and we won't find any of it out if we shut the messenger boys up for them, will we? By the way, this is my opinion on Russell Brand.
He's not the Messiah, he's a very naughty boy!